He didn't make an announcement. There was no dramatic farewell, no final speech, no last day on the job video. 1 minute, Colton was a regular face on Robbie Layton Nation, joking in the shop and working on builds millions were watching. And the next, he was just gone. And viewers noticed fast. Comments started piling up. Where's Colton? Did he quit? Was there drama? Or was something bigger going on behind the scenes? The silence only made the mystery louder. In a world where creators document everything, a sudden disappearance feels intentional. Fans began connecting dots, revisiting old clips, and trading theories that ranged from wholesome to wild. Some explanations sounded reasonable. Others felt straight out of a reality show plot. But buried under rumors, speculation, and half-answers is a story that's way more human than most people expected. And it changes how you see the entire situation. What made Colton stand out wasn't just that he worked in the shop, it was how naturally he fit into the rhythm of the channel. Some people show up on camera and feel like guests. Colton felt permanent. He had that easy presence where he could be joking 1 second and deep in a build the next, and viewers picked up on that balance fast. He wasn't just background crew, he was part of the personality of the place, and when someone like that disappears, it doesn't feel like a normal staff change, it feels like a missing piece. Fans started noticing the shift in subtle ways at first. A video would drop and people would scan the background. Another upload came and the comment section filled with the same question. At first it sounded casual, almost playful. Where's Colton? But after a few more videos, the tone changed. People weren't asking anymore, they were analyzing. They were comparing timestamps, revisiting old uploads, and debating when his last real appearance happened. That's when the situation turned from curiosity into a full-blown mystery. The channel kept moving like nothing had changed. Builds continued, energy stayed high. But the absence hung over everything for long-time viewers. The more normal the videos looked, the stranger the silence felt. And on YouTube, silence is gasoline. When creators don't explain a shift, the audience fills the gap themselves. Theories don't just appear, they multiply. Some fans assumed it was temporary. Others were convinced there had to be behind-the-scenes tension no one wanted to talk about. And once that idea started spreading, the speculation took on a life of its own. And that's where things really escalated. The first explanation that started circulating didn't come from a dramatic leak or some insider expose. It came from fan conversations, the kind that sound almost too ordinary to be true. Posts began popping up in community groups claiming Colton stepped away because he had just become a father and wanted time at home. According to people repeating the story, a baby arrived, priorities shifted overnight, and work suddenly wasn't the center of everything anymore. On paper, it's the most grounded explanation possible. No scandal, no blow-up, just life happening. But the internet has a hard time accepting simple answers. Even though the story spread quickly, it didn't land the way you'd expect. Instead of closing the case, it opened a new round of questions. If it was just family leave, why not say it clearly on the channel? Why let the mystery build? Viewers aren't strangers to creators taking time off for family. In fact, audiences usually rally around that. The lack of a direct statement is what kept people uneasy. That silence created a strange split in the fan base. Some people defended the privacy angle, arguing that not everything needs to be content. Others felt the quiet was intentional, like there was a missing chapter nobody wanted to read out loud. The longer the gap stretched, the harder it became for the simple life change explanation to satisfy everyone. Because on YouTube, time feels louder than words. A few weeks can pass quietly, a few months starts to feel permanent. And as viewers kept waiting for clarity that never fully came, attention shifted away from the baby story and towards something else entirely. Clues hiding in plain sight that suggested Colton wasn't disappearing, he might have been starting over. That's when people started noticing something most viewers had completely missed at first. Colton hadn't gone quiet online, he just changed lanes. While fans were refreshing RLN uploads looking for a cameo, his own social pages were telling a different story. Posts tied to tattoo work began surfacing, and not in a casual hobby way. This looked structured. Bookings, studio mentions, clean portfolio shots. It didn't read like a side project. It looked like a career pivot that had been building for a while. Once fans connected that dot, the conversation shifted again. Instead of asking where he went, people started asking when this plan started. because a move like that doesn't happen overnight. Tattooing at a professional level takes years of practice, licensing, and reputation. That realization made his disappearance feel less like a sudden exit and more like a quiet transition that had been in motion behind the scenes long before viewers noticed. And suddenly, the timeline people were obsessing over started to make more sense. What threw everyone off was how normal the channel felt during the change. There was no dramatic energy, no visible tension, no obvious farewell arc. If anything, the smoothness made it stranger. Fans are used to YouTube exits being loud, emotional videos, cryptic captions, or at least a goodbye post. Colton's shift felt surgical by comparison. No spectacle, just movement. And that calm exit sparked a new theory entirely. Maybe the absence wasn't about conflict at all. Maybe it was about choosing a future that had nothing to do with internet fame. But just as that idea started settling in, another detail surfaced that complicated everything. Because he didn't look completely disconnected from the RLN world either. Just when people were ready to accept that Colton had fully moved on, another twist pulled the conversation back in. Fans started spotting moments that suggested he wasn't totally disconnected from the RLN orbit after all. Social posts and reels tied to big automotive events, including tags and references linked to the crew, hinted that the door might not have slammed shut the way everyone assumed. It wasn't a full return, it wasn't a cameo tour, but it was enough to blur the narrative people had built in their heads. That gray area is what kept the mystery alive. If he had completely cut ties, the story would have been simple. He left. New career, end of chapter. But these small digital breadcrumbs suggested something more nuanced. Maybe the exit wasn't hostile. Maybe it wasn't even dramatic. It might have been a practical shift where relationships stayed intact, just no longer front and center on camera. For viewers who were expecting a scandal arc, that idea almost felt unsatisfying because I'll side aside some because it replaces chaos with maturity. At the same time, those sightings triggered another round of speculation. People debated whether he'd return, whether he was freelancing, or whether he was simply staying friendly with former co-workers. The truth is, internet audiences struggle with in-between endings. We like clean breaks or big reunions. Colton's situation sat in that uncomfortable middle where life keeps moving without giving viewers a neat storyline. And that's when the conversation turned away from Colton himself and towards something bigger. Why creators and crews sometimes choose silence in the first place, and why that silence says more about the internet than it does about the people living through it. The longer this dragged on, the clearer one thing became. The silence wasn't an accident. In creator spaces, especially channels built around a tight crew, every public statement becomes permanent. One sentence can spark headlines, fan wars, and months of reaction content. So sometimes the safest move isn't explaining everything, it's explaining nothing. And while that frustrates viewers, it's a survival tactic many creators quietly rely on. There's also a reality most audiences don't see. Not every life change is meant to be content. When someone shifts careers, becomes a parent, or reorders their priorities, they're not thinking about narrative arcs. They're thinking about stability, privacy, real-world responsibilities that don't care about comment sections. From the outside, fans want closure. From the inside, the people living it just want space to adjust. That gap between expectation and reality is where online mysteries are born. What made Colton's situation explode wasn't drama. It was the absence of a clean explanation in a culture addicted to explanations. The internet treats unanswered questions like puzzles that must have hidden meanings. But sometimes the missing piece isn't scandal, it's boundaries. And boundaries look suspicious to people who are used to seeing everything documented. Ironically, the attempt to keep things calm is what amplified the noise. The quieter the situation stayed, the louder the speculation grew. And by the time viewers stepped back and looked at the full picture, the story had evolved into something bigger than one person leaving a channel. It became a case study in how audiences react when real life refuses to follow entertainment rules. And that realization changes how you interpret everything that came before it. When you line up all the pieces, the story stops looking like a scandal and starts looking like a quiet life pivot that happened in public. A new child, a different career path, ongoing connections that never fully disappeared. None of those details scream drama on their own, but stacked together, They explain why Colton's exit felt confusing instead of explosive. Viewers were waiting for a twist that never came, while the real answer was unfolding in slow motion the entire time. What throws people off is that YouTube has trained audiences to expect spectacle. Big emotions get clicks, farewell videos trend, public fallouts generate entire commentary ecosystems. When something ends without fireworks, it almost feels incomplete. But real life rarely follows the rules of internet storytelling. Sometimes chapters close quietly, with no villain and no final speech. Just a person choosing a different direction and moving forward without turning it into a headline. That doesn't make the curiosity wrong. It's natural to wonder what happened when someone becomes part of your weekly routine and then disappears. Familiar faces create a sense of connection, even through a screen. But the ending people were searching for was never hidden. It just wasn't dramatic enough to satisfy the version of the story fans expected to find. And in a strange way, that's what makes this situation stick with people. It's not a cautionary tale or a meltdown arc. It's a reminder that behind every channel are real humans making decisions that don't revolve around an audience. The mystery wasn't about betrayal or secrets. It was about change, the kind that doesn't need a spotlight to be real. And that might be the most honest ending a story like this can have. So what really happened to Colton from Robbie Layton Nation? When you strip away the rumors, the comment section detectives, and the theories that spiraled way past the facts, the picture that remains is surprisingly grounded. A major life change happened. A new opportunity opened. Priorities shifted. And instead of turning it into a public event, he stepped into the next phase quietly. No scandal arc. No explosive fallout. Just a human decision that didn't come packaged as entertainment. What makes the story feel bigger than it is comes down to expectation. Viewers aren't just watching builds, they're watching people. Over time, those faces become part of a routine. When one disappears, it feels personal, even if it isn't meant to be. The gap between what audiences want, closure, explanation, a clean ending, and what real life provides is where the mystery lived. And the internet rushed in to fill that gap with noise. The truth is, not every exit is meant to be content. Some chapters close off camera, some transitions happen without a speech, and sometimes the most honest explanation is also the least dramatic one. Someone chose a different direction and kept moving. That doesn't erase the curiosity. If anything, it makes the story more relatable, because everyone hits moments where life forces a pivot that outsiders won't fully understand. Colton's situation just happened to unfold in front of an audience that wasn't ready for a quiet ending, and maybe that's the takeaway. Not every disappearance hides a secret. Sometimes it's just growth happening in real time.